This is now what? Life after redundancy. When your job disappears, but you don't. Hello. I'm Stevie, and you're joining me on my journey through and hopefully past redundancy, where I'm regularly asking myself the question, now what? And if you've spent the last hour refreshing job boards like you're checking whether the Deliveroo driver has finally left the restaurant, I'm hoping on a Big Mac soon. This show is for anyone who's ended up in that strange bit between jobs where everyone keeps asking what you're doing now, and you've run out of new ways to say looking and making it sound like a legitimate activity. You're capable, you know what you're doing, you've got proof of that sitting in a Word document somewhere, but none of it stops your brain from inventing problems in the middle of the night. So this is where we talk about the practical side, the things that actually move stuff forward when you're stuck, and the emotional side, which is the parts that catch you off guard because no one really says things out loud in the redundancy meeting. I'm not here to necessarily motivate you, I'm trying to be useful, and sometimes that just means saying some of the quieter bits out loud so you know you're not the only one thinking it. And today we are talking about red flags. So right now you may be looking at job adverts, scrolling, reading descriptions, and buried somewhere between dynamic team and competitive salary, which usually means neither, there's a list of things called benefits, perks, reasons you should want to work there. And some of them sound great. Unlimited holiday, fast-paced environment, we're like a family here. Except sometimes they might not be great. They could be warnings. And when you're job hunting, especially after redundancy, when your confidence is doing its best impression of a wobbly chair, you need to know which ones are actually red flags just with, better marketing. So today we're walking through a few phrases that maybe you should hit pause before you hit the apply button. Some of the things that employers may frame as positives that could actually translate into you're going to hate it here by month 3. Not all of them, not always, but enough that you need to know what you're looking at. Because redundancy is hard enough without accidentally walking into a building that's kind of on fire. But before we get into it, if you find this show useful, if it helps you feel a little bit less alone in this weird in-between bit, then the best thing you can do is follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It genuinely helps the show reach other people who are also asking themselves now what and wondering if they're the only ones struggling with it. And if you want to go further, head over to theinvisibleq.co.uk. It's all about supporting people through redundancy in ways that actually acknowledge how messy and complicated it is. There are tools, articles, and a community and ways to get stuck in if this is something that resonates with you. Because redundancy does create this invisible queue of things that you're carrying, and you're also waiting in the invisible queue. So if it sounds like something you need right now, please go and take a look. Right then, let's talk about red flags. Red flags are everywhere once you start looking for them. And it's not just in job adverts, it's in life. You're in the supermarket, you get the meal deal, the sandwich is looking acceptable, the crisps are, borderline, but you notice the drink selection includes something called Tropical Sunshine Blast, and the ingredient list starts with water, more sugar, bit of sad pineapple and regret. That's a red flag. You put it back, you get an innocent smoothie like any sensible adult who's learned from past mistakes. Or you're scrolling through a local Facebook group and someone posts, looking for a reliable plumber, last 3 didn't show up, 1 took a deposit and vanished. Another one said my bathroom had bad energy, must start immediately. And you think, maybe the problem isn't the plumbers, maybe the problem is standing in that bathroom taking photos for Facebook. Big old red flag. Or you're at a party. I say that like I go to parties. You're at a social event. Someone corners you, they lean in and they say, you know what, the thing about me, I'm brutally honest. I just say what everyone's thinking, which is code for I'm rude and I've rebranded it as a personality trait. Red flag. You nod politely, you retreat to the kitchen, you make a sandwich. Life is full of red flags. Little warnings that something's not quite right, even if it's being presented as fine. Sometimes you spot them, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you see them and just ignore them because you're hopeful or desperate or too tired to care. And job hunting is the same. I mentioned in last week's episode that I'd applied for a role where I hadn't completely read the full job description. I just read the requirements. And there was a mention in there that the applicant needed to be non-threatening. And the more I've thought about it, the more I kind of keep coming back to, is this really a normal thing to put into writing? As though someone sat in a meeting drafting that line, sent it to HR, got it approved, and not one person said, hang on, should we actually say that? Because I fully expect there is a story behind why that was included in the job description. There's always a story when something strange makes it into a job advert. But the price to find out what that story is, no thank you. I'm not paying with my sanity or my notice period to discover why non-threatening was considered essential criteria. And that's the thing about job adverts. They're not neutral. They are descriptions of roles, and they're basically the shop windows into what it's actually like to work there. And sometimes when you see through the window that the building is on fire with someone inside waving and shouting, "It's fine, it's character building." Let's go through some of the phrases that could make you pause. Fast-paced environment. And this is one that shows up everywhere. And it sounds fine, doesn't it? It's dynamic, energetic, things happen quickly. Which may actually mean that no one at the top could make a decision and stick to it. Senior management changes direction every other week, priorities shift like someone's playing corporate Jenga, and when the promises they made to executives or shareholders don't materialise, it's going to be your fault. You'll spend days firefighting problems that shouldn't exist, reacting to chaos someone else creates, being told it's just how things are here. That's exciting, you should enjoy the challenge. It's not exciting, it's exhausting, and the chaos isn't a feature, it's a failure. Which brings me to, we're like a family. And I had to check, but my family doesn't have an HR department. Families do not conduct performance reviews, and families don't make you redundant when the quarterly numbers dip. This phrase is code for, we expect you to work for below the market rate, never discuss your salary, put in unpaid overtime because that's what families do, and attend 2-hour team building sessions in your own time where someone makes you do a trust fall and pretend it's meaningful. The moment things get difficult, the second there's a restructure or cost-cutting exercise, that family's going to vanish faster than biscuits in the staff kitchen. Because it turns out you weren't family, you were an employee, and they remembered. And what about phrases like jump right in and hit the ground running? Because they sound proactive, don't they? They sound like they trust you to figure things out, and they're going to respect your ability to be autonomous. But what it could actually mean is there's no onboarding, no training, no processes, no policies, everything's everywhere. Other teams won't work with you easily, but you'll be responsible for chasing them down constantly. You'll never know when they've changed their answer to something, so you've had to chase everything every time, like you're a detective in the building when no one wants to be found. And if you don't complain, if you work 60 hours a week to do what should take 30, if they acted like a functioning organization, they call you a rock star in the Slack messages. Which isn't the compliment it sounds. It's a warning that you've normalized something that's broken. Usually this kind of thing happens because someone else, essential, burnt out and left. Someone who was holding the whole thing together with willpower and a concerning amount of caffeine. And now they need someone to pick up the pieces quickly before anyone notices how bad it's got. Work hard, play hard. There's a pool table. There's a ping-pong table. Maybe there's table football, or an arcade machine if you're lucky. Big windows visible to the whole office, proof that it's a fun place to work. You will never use them, because the moment you do, there is a chance you will get pulled into a meeting to discuss your priorities. The pool table isn't there for you, it's there for the website. It's there so that it can be put in the job ad and the recruitment video and say, hey, look how fun we are. It's bait. And everyone who works there knows it. They learned in the first week not to set foot near it. and you'll learn too, but by then, you'll have already been marked as someone who doesn't understand the culture. What work hard, play hard could actually mean is that you're going to be constantly overworked and stressed, and at the end of the week, you'll be expected to go to the pub with your colleagues and drink away half your pay to numb the pain. Because that's what playing hard looks like when the work is eating you alive. What about wearing many hats? And that sounds quite flexible, varied, and potentially a chance to learn different things, to be more than just one role. But what it could actually mean is that no one has clearly defined responsibilities. Your job will expand into whatever no one else is doing. There's no promotion criteria because there's no structure. Management turnover could be high, which is why all of those hats are sitting there in the first place. And you'll spend your days doing everything except the thing you actually applied for. You need to cover gaps that shouldn't exist, to solve problems that aren't yours, to make up for the fact that they're understaffed, underfunded, or maybe just badly organized. And if you ask for clarity, you'll be told it's about being a team player, about being flexible and embracing the chaos. That's not flexibility, that's exploitation with PR. We value honesty. And I think everyone values honesty to a degree. But there is a possibility that if that needs to be said out loud, then they might not value honesty, even if it's being diplomatized. That's not the right word. Even if it's being put in quite a diplomatic way. For example, you may be sent an anonymous survey and you'll be asked how you're finding things and what could be better. You'll be pressured into filling it in so that the manager hits their participation target, and then several months later, leadership may finally review the results, potentially get annoyed that people gave honest feedback and implement changes that have absolutely nothing to do with the root causes of the problem. And if you didn't fill it in, you might get an email from HR CCing your manager asking why not, which really drives home how anonymous the whole thing could be. Now, I've whistle-stopped through a few random red flags, and I do have to really call out that not every red flag is really red. It might be more maroon. Sometimes it's just a badly written advert. Someone in HR copied and pasted from a template. They didn't think about what fast-paced could imply to someone reading it. They genuinely just mean that we're busy and didn't realize it could read as we're a disaster. A big part of it is your own biases, especially if you've been burnt before. If you've worked somewhere that said, we're like a family, and there was a creepy uncle sat in the corner, and it became a nightmare, and now every time you see that phrase, you just assume the worst, you might be right, but your own bias might be actually preventing you from seeing a good opportunity. So these are just individual consideration points. They aren't set in stone. You've got to trust your own judgment and trust your gut instinct on these, but also you need to be asking questions. So if you have the opportunity to interview, inquire on the things that are triggering the red flag response. See how they respond. For example, if a pool table has been mentioned and you ask the interviewer, when did you last use the pool table, and they get a bit defensive, that's going to tell you something. But if they're open and honest about what that actually means in practice, and that tells you something as well. Basically, you're allowed to be cautious. You're allowed to read between the lines, but you can also give places the benefit of the doubt when they've earned it. Just don't ignore the red flags entirely, because sometimes they're there for a reason. What can you do about it, though? There are a few things that you can do when looking at job adverts that can help you navigate this. And the first thing is reading between the lines, because job adverts are marketing copy. They're not, beige descriptions of reality. They're designed to make a role sound appealing, to get people applying for it, to fill a gap, to solve a problem. So when you see any of the phrases that make you pause, you need to be asking what is the opposite of that statement if they were being honest. So fast-paced may mean disorganized, family may mean there are boundary issues, jump right in may mean there's no support. they might be indications of what environment you're looking at. They may not actually be the selling points. And then, like I say, asking direct questions when you have the opportunity to interview is one of the best way to understand whether a red flag is genuinely a red flag. So if someone has mentioned the ping-pong table, for example, you can ask how often the average person uses that ping-pong table. If someone says it's a fast-paced environment, you can ask how decisions get communicated when priorities shift. You're not being difficult. You're kind of just approaching it with a more sensible head-on and doing due diligence. If they get defensive or vague and start trying to talk around the question, that's telling you something. So good employers expect these questions. They're ready for them. They want you to understand what you're walking into. But bad employers, they're going to get flustered. They're going to deflect and say things like, we'd rather focus on the positives, which is your cue to focus on the exit. Then there is just trusting your gut when it feels a bit off. If the job advert is listing statutory benefits, the legal bare minimum, like bank holidays, as though they're perks, that's a company who would take those away if they legally could. If the interview feels like they're overselling the culture and underselling the actual work, there is a potential that they're trying to distract you from something. And if everyone you meet looks exhausted and no one's making eye contact, you've just seen what 6 months in looks like. Your gut isn't always right, but it's worth listening to, especially when it's telling you something's a bit squiffy. And finally, you're allowed to walk away. Redundancy makes you feel like you can't afford to be picky, like any job is better than no job, and sometimes that's true in the short term. Sometimes you need to take what's available just to stop the financial spiral. But walking into a role where the red flags were right there in the advert and you ignored them because you were desperate doesn't truly fix the problem. It's kind of just delaying it. You'll be back here in 6 months, job hunting again, except now you're also burnt out and your confidence has taken another punch to the guts. So if something feels wrong, if the red flags are stacking up and your instinct is telling you this isn't right, listen to it. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to keep looking and to prioritize not making things worse over making them slightly less uncertain in the immediate term. So that's not about being unrealistic. It doesn't mean holding out for perfect. Never let perfect stand in the way of something good. But it does mean paying attention when a job advert is essentially a list of reasons not to apply dressed up as benefits. So what's the takeaway? Here's the key thing. You're not being cynical when you read job adverts carefully. You're being realistic. And these phrases exist because they work. They sound good. They make companies look appealing and professional. And when you're job hunting after redundancy, when your confidence is all wobbly, you just want someone to want you. It's easy to focus on the positives and ignore those small warnings. But you're smarter than that. You know what ambiguous language looks like. You know when something's being sold a little bit too hard. So the next time you see We're Like a Family or unlimited time off or fast-paced environments, don't just nod and move on. Stop, read it, and ask yourself what it actually means. Because the job you're trying to get yourself out of redundancy and into, it should be better than the one you left. And that starts with knowing which doors not to go through. And that's me for today. If any of this lands with you, if you nodded, laughed, or did the tiny exhale through the nose, it counts as a reaction in England, then please do me a small favor and follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It massively helps the show find other people who are wandering around in this weird in-between stage of life. And if you know someone who's currently in their now what era, send them this episode or point them towards theinvisibleq.co.uk. And if you're asking yourself now what, you're in the right place. Before you go, if any of this has been useful, please do me a favor and follow the show wherever you're listening. And if you've got 60 seconds and an opinion, leave a review. It helps other people find the show, and it also stops me wondering if I'm turning into some sort of audio hermit. And if you want more than just my voice turning up in your ears once a week, head to theinvisibleq.com. It's a support platform for people navigating redundancy, built by people who've actually been through it and remember how strange and exhausting the whole thing is. But for now, thank you for listening. Until next time.